Okay? So to recap, come in. You get a chumash?
No, I'm going to get some.
Good, get a sheet, that's good. You want to, Betty, bring some to those poor people in the back there.
There's only one.
All right, share with somebody cute. Good. Okay. The way that I read the Torah is a drama in 3 acts. We're introduced in Act 1 to the principal character of this drama, who's a character called God. Now, if you're going to understand Torah, you have to erase everything you've ever known about that word. Because the character God, the literary character that we meet in Genesis, is not the Aristotelian God you learned about in college or high school. It's not the God you learned in Sunday school. You have to open your mind and listen to what the Torah tells you about this character. We don't know anything about his backstory. We don't know where he came from, what his existence is. All we know is that God creates. And he takes a certain delight in his creation. Because every time he creates something, he says, ooh, tov, it's good. Taka, it's good. Taka is a biblical word. And then at the end of creation, he creates this one creature, which is unique among creatures because he's created in the image of God. The creature to share the responsibility and the celebration of creation. That's the human being. And he puts this creation into the world, and right away this creation disappoints him. And there's a great deal of thinking about why man disappoints God. But if you think about it from a different perspective, the question is, why would you tell such a story? Why would the deep theme of the opening chapters of Genesis be God's disappointment in man instead of God's celebration of man? Whoever tells that story about their family, right? Meet my kids. They're all disappointments. Oh, this one, oh, don't ask. This one, oh, this one, oh, this one, oh, if only. No one tells that. You know, you meet anyone, my kids, are you kidding? You know, he's getting out of prison on Tuesday. He's a wonderful child. You know, Machaya, this kid. I mean, but why would you, just think for just a second, who do you have to be to tell that story? Who do you have to be? What is the view of the world that tells the cosmic story as a story of divine disappointment? Just meditate on that for a minute, because I have. It's good for this week for some of us. So just meditate on, like, how do you deal with a world that you didn't expect? And what promise does it have? And what are the emotions that go with it? What are the possibilities of such a world? Now, the remarkable thing about this creature is, why does he disappoint God? Because he wants to be free. Man is the only self-creating creature in all of creation. Everything else is, if we use a contemporary word, programmed from the beginning. Your dog will always be a dog. You can teach him to roll over and play dead or fetch the slippers or not to pee on the carpet, but he's not going to stop being a dog. His character, his personality, his dogginess is put there from the beginning. Our character is open. And that openness is one of the impulses of the human condition. We want to remain open. We don't want to be confined. So at the same time, that which disappoints God is exactly what God put into man. And what disappoints God is actually, and through the whole Bible this is going to play out, it's actually going to be the most promising part of human being. The impulse toward freedom. The self-creating character of the human being. Right? So the Bible is at the same time a book of disappointment, but it's a book of faith. That is, it's a book of hope. That the self-creating capacity of human beings will find its way in the end toward a life of righteousness. So the opening scene, the opening act of 1 is Adam, and Adam disappoints, and the world ends up filled with violence. Ironically, for those of you who are politically minded, the word for violence in Genesis is Hamas, right? Right, very interesting. And so God, at the end of the story, God says, to hell with it. I've had enough. I don't want it anymore. I'm going to destroy it all. Just before he destroys it all, his eye catches a fellow named Noach. Ironically, Noach means rest. And he says, I'll save the world for him. And so he builds a boat, saves the world for this man. And this man starts again, Adam 2. I couldn't create a man to share my creation. Perhaps I can choose one. And he chooses this fellow, and Noach saves the world and comes out of the ark, and he falls apart as well. And we saw last time from the Babel story, human beings, again, choose, and they choose poorly. And again, God is disappointed. But having made a promise not to wipe it all out, God's going to try Act 3. And here's Act 3. I couldn't create a good man. I couldn't choose a man to be good. Maybe I can teach one. Maybe I can teach one. And so we're introduced to this character named Avraham. And he is going to be the third possibility. How do you create a human being who shares the divine vision of the world and takes responsibility for the world he lives in? So if you have the Chumash, if you don't, it's okay, I'll read it. If you have it, it's on page 69. Vayomer Adonai el Avram. God says to this fellow Avram, Lech Lecha. Now, whenever you have a verb that's repeated that way, it's intensified. So go is what Lech means. Lech Lecha means like go. Taka go, right? You go. Well, and it could also be Lech Lecha could mean go to yourself. Lecha could also mean to yourself. It could mean go inward, right?
It's for yourself.
Go for yourself. That's a better one. So what does that mean?
Well, there's three places where Lecha is used.
Yeah.
Each one is teaching a basic need of life.
Okay.
First is Lech Lecha.
Lecha, go.
You gotta love Zion
Okay.
in order to be a whole Jew.
Okay.
Second is in Leviticus 9, Kach Lecha and Egel Habakar.
Okay.
So the second is
Take for yourself.
Take for yourself a sacrifice. In order to be a full person, you have to learn to sacrifice.
Okay.
And then the final one is for Moshe in Exodus, Pesolacha. Write for yourself the law.
The laws. Okay,
Meaning,
good.
There's a law, but until it's in you.
Right.
So in order to be a full person, a full Jew, you have to love Zion, you have to be willing to sacrifice, and you have to make God's law your law.
Good. Good sermon.
I gave it already.
I know. How did I know you?
I sent it to you, and you gave it.
That's right. You remember they used to say, how was it that the Yiddish Morgen Journal knew on Monday what the New York Times would print on Sunday? You know? Right? So come in. El, come in. Good.
You like that?
I like that, very nice. That's beautiful. All right, Lech Lecha. So go to yourself, go for yourself. Me'artzecha, leave your land. Mimoladetcha, leave your birthplace. Mi beit avicha, leave the house of your father. Three different things. Now, you could have said that in one line, right? Leave your native land. What is the emphasis for? Why do you have to leave? Why couldn't God reveal himself? Why couldn't Avram begin his career there? Why do you have to leave? So I want you to keep this in mind for a moment. We're talking about a journey. This is a journey story. This is a road story. The character will change, and the journey represents discovery. This is the great religious journey. What does it mean to be on the great religious journey? Okay? Where does it start? Where does the religious journey start? How does it change a human being? Where does it end? What do you do with it at the end? This is the great religious journey. Now, the other interesting thing, of course, is that what the Bible takes for granted is the single thing we would never take for granted. These days, if someone comes in and says, you know, I was showering this morning and the Lord God said, Lech lecha me'artzecha, you know, we give you a shot of Haldol and let you lie down for an hour. Okay? But for Abraham, number one, that God would call him doesn't surprise him, that he listens, that he identifies this as the divine voice. All of this is assumed by this story. Or at least it's assumed by the story because that's not interesting to the story. Where the voice comes from, what the voice is not interesting to the story. What it does to the man who hears it is what's interesting to the story. Lech lecha me'artzecha. And here's the deal. Here is the opening of the third act I couldn't create a man to share my creation. I couldn't choose one. Maybe I can teach one. So what is he told? Ve'aseh lecha goy gadol. I will make you a big nation. Ve'avarechecha. I will bless you. Ve'gadla shimcha. I'll make your name great. Now what's interesting is the Bible knows that you've been reading Joseph Campbell. Or at least seeing him on PBS. And that you know, the Bible knows that you know that every world literature has the same story. The God comes to the man and says, be my hero, be my champion, be my conqueror. And together we will conquer the world. I will make you great. I will make your name great. I will bless you. You know that. You know that. That Pericles got the same thing, and Perseus got the same thing, and the Navajo chief, Seattle, got the same thing. Every world literature, Native American, Polynesian, Aborigine and Australian, European, every European mythology, all the Middle Eastern mythologies, everybody has the same story. So you're going, yawn. Except when you get to the next word. This is the Bible's clever way of writing. I give you something you're ready for, you're used to, you expect. I give you something you're ready for, you're used to, expect. I'm giving something you're expecting, and then, bam, I throw in a surprise. So, I will make of you a great nation, I will bless you, I will make your name great. Ve'yeh bracha. Heye is tzivui, it's command. And you be bracha, a blessing. Not a conqueror, not a ruler. Be a blessing. Be a blessing. Now, interesting. It's interesting. Be. I know what it seems to say a blessing, to pronounce a blessing. What does it mean to be a blessing? And notice what it doesn't say. Notice what it doesn't say. What doesn't it say? It doesn't say, Heye bracha li. Be my blessing. It doesn't say, Heye bracha le'amcha. Be a blessing to your people, your tribe. Who am I to be a blessing to? Look at the next one. Now, ready? And I will bless those who bless you. And I will curse those who curse you. Boys, that's a great bumper sticker. No? V'nivrachu b'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. V'nivrachu b'cha, it's nifal. Nivrachu b'cha, and in you shall be blessed, kol mishpachot ha'adama, all the families of the earth. To whom is Avram to be a blessing? To all the families of the earth. Not to God. To the earth. You are to be the vessel of blessing for the earth. So what does God want? God says, I couldn't create a man to share my world. I couldn't choose one. I'm recruiting you. Harvey Milk, right? You're recruiting. I'm here to recruit you. I need somebody to be the vessel of blessing for all mankind. So right away, you've got to ask the following question. Is this a statement of Jewish particularism? Of Jewish tribalism? Of Jewish specialness? Identity? Or is this an expression of Jewish universalism? Of the Jewish responsibility to the rest of the world? And the answer is yes. Because you can't get one without the other. This was one of Rabbi Schulweiss's most powerful teachings all through his life. You can't choose one without the other. You just can't. This is the most particularist statement in the Jewish canon, and at the same time, it's the most universalist. So what is your task, Jews? You walk the world. What is your task? Hayeh bracha, be a blessing. Be a blessing. And now we'll begin the story. How does he be a blessing? How does he journeys from his land far away? So I gave you a sheet. So the question that the Midrash is interested in this. There's two questions that the Midrash is consumed with. First of all, why him? Why him? The Torah tells us almost nothing about him. Just tells us about his patrimony, where he comes from. Why this man? I told you last week, I think it's very simple why Abraham. I would have written a much shorter Midrash. It's because his name starts with an A. A-B. His name was Zachary, he never would have gotten chosen. In other words, I think that what the Torah means by not telling you his backstory is that he's random. That God chose anybody. The Torah, the Midrash doesn't want to believe that. They want to know his backstory. They want to know why him. But the deeper question is, what's the meaning of this journey? What is the meaning of the religious journey? We like to say that he's a monotheist. It's getting warm in here now. I can't fix this thing. $1 million shul. $1 million shul. $12 thermostat. What is the meaning of the religious journey? How does the religious journey change you? How do you look at the world differently? And then the deeper question is, if Avram Avinu, Avram our father, Abraham, is the embodiment of all future Jews, of our tribe, of our people, what's the meaning of his character? Who is he? And who are we as his descendants? And then on a deeper level, the question is, if he's a monotheist, what does that mean? What does monotheism really mean? What's the essence of his revolution? Lecha, break away from everything you know. I'm going to recreate you as a man. Lecha, I want you going into the world naked. I don't want you carrying your presuppositions and your culture and your prejudices and your biases. I want you to cut it. I want to wash you clean and start over again. I'm going to make you into a new man. I couldn't create one. I couldn't choose one. I can make you into one. But you got to let go of all the junk you came from. And mimalaretcha, you got to let go of all of the junk you brought from home. And mibeit avicha, you got to let go of all of the stuff that comes with family and prejudice. Let it all go and be somebody new. So here you got a whole bunch of different midrashim. You'll have some fun with this. Each one of them is a different answer to the question, where's he going? What's he doing? Right? Yes, I haven't even said a thing and you're asking a question already. God bless you. I know, I don't have enough. I'm going to read them out loud.
When it says from your country, from your homeland,
Yeah.
It means erase your past.
Right.
Which is contrary to what we are doing today.
Yeah. Erase your past. But you'll see the question really is that part of growing up? Is this everybody's journey? That's a really interesting question. Right? Don't leave home without it, said American Express. Except Abraham was told, don't leave home with it. I don't want you carrying American Express. I don't want you carrying a capacity already. I want you to develop your own capacity. And by the way, this theme of leaving home is a big theme in the Bible. Think about it, right? Who else leaves home? Right? Jacob leaves home. Joseph leaves home. Rebecca leaves home. Right? Moses leaves home. Everybody leaves home. Everyone's leaving home. And you guys are complaining about your children, right? They're doing what's the oldest Jewish thing in the world. They're leaving home. The damn thing is when they come back. That's what really. All right, Midrash Rabbah. This is an old Midrash. This is a beautiful, and it has a wonderful double entendre that's going to change everything. Rabbi Isaac told the parable of a man who was traveling from place to place when he saw a mansion in flames. Now the word is daluka, which can mean two things. It can either mean it's burning, or it can mean it's filled with light. Let's do each one. First, it's burning. He sees this beautiful mansion, and it's burning. He wondered, the man, is it possible that the mansion is without someone to look after it? So it's this beautiful home, and it's burning. Is it possible that this mansion has no owner, no one who is going to miss it? No one who would take responsibility for fighting the fire. At that moment, the owner of the mansion peered out at him and said, I am the owner of the mansion. So too, as Abraham was wondering, is it possible the world should be without someone to look after it? And the Holy One peered down and said, I am the world's owner. So, what is the meaning of monotheism? What is the meaning of this religious journey? He goes into the world and he sees a house burning. And he says, what a beautiful home. What a waste of a home. Is there no one who grieves for it? Is there no one who's willing to fight for it, to try and save it? And that's how he discovers God. So what's the meaning of monotheism? It's not yet. We don't know that yet, Ev. What do we know? Say the word again.
A caretaker.
Caretaker. Define care. What a good word. Is that a good word? Care. Define that word.
I should have brought a dictionary.
No. Don't be a smart guy. Define caretaker. Come on.
Someone who takes care.
Yes, right. Someone who takes care. Someone who cares. Someone who's going to grieve if this thing is broken. Someone who needs to extend himself to protect it. What does it mean to be an adherent to this God? It means to walk the world and protect the world, to be the caretaker. Caretaker, it's a great word, by the way. It's a wonderful word. No, think about this. It means to be the caretaker of the world. Who are you if you're Abraham's descendant? You're the world's caretaker. You see the world in flames, you stop and do something about it. You will not, it is beyond you to simply be indifferent. It is beyond you. It is an impulse to help. It is an impulse to jump in. Fighting a fire is a dangerous thing, but there's no possibility that he wouldn't jump in.
It's the U.S. Navy SEALs Act.
As-
Which way would you run?
Which way would you run? That's good. I like that. So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the mansion isn't on fire. The mansion is this beautiful mansion filled with light. It's not on fire. It's not in danger. On the opposite, it's remarkable. It's wondrous. And now he says, is there no one who takes pride in this mansion? Is there no one who celebrates this mansion? And the owner comes out and says, it's mine. So now what does that mean? What is the other impulse of the monotheist? Ellen, you raised your hand. And
I own it, and I own it all, and it's not for you to, I mean, that's the negative side.
no, give me the positive one.
The positive side,
I own it, and therefore what?
and I can share it, I can light, make you a light too, and bring you into the light.
Right. Oops. I own it, and I celebrate it. I own it, and it gives me joy. I own it, and there's someone to enjoy it. And you have both of these impulses. Heschel read it the second way. So the first third of his book, God in Search of Man, is all about wonder. That you walk the world with a sense of wonder, and that's where you come to divinity. Yes, please, Gloria.
Isn't this an extension of the earlier edict to dominion over the earth?
Yeah, the question is, what does dominion mean?
Well, this kind of plays it out more.
Yeah.
To protect,
Okay.
to care,
Yeah.
it now tells us in more detail.
Yeah. I think, let's go one step further, though. If I give you a commandment to have dominion over the world, I make you a shomer, I make you a guard. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to guard this house for me. So you have a sense of responsibility and perhaps a sense of obligation to me. But to care for it because you're its owner is a different level of responding. You respond from a much more emotional, impulsive kind of thing. You care for it, right? I was always interested in, you sometimes, God forbid, you see an animal on the freeway or the roadway that's been injured, and you see people stop. And people will stop and try to care for this animal, right? There's this impulsive response which says, Rachmanis, you can't turn away. You can't turn away from that level of suffering, right? So they have all these obnoxious television commercials with sad-eyed dogs, no, really, send us money, and I understand the impulse because there's a deep inside impulse. It's mine, care for it. It's mine to care for. Good, very good. So this is the first definition. This is the moral definition. The moral definition of monotheism here is it's God's world, care for it. I become God's ally in caring for the world. I'm not gonna turn away. And of course, the other interesting part is how many people walked by the mansion and didn't stop to look. You're the only one that stopped to look, and that's how Abraham is chosen, because he's the one who stopped to look. We'll have the same theme with Moses later. The Midrash will teach us that the burning bush was there since the beginning of creation. The burning bush sits on the corner of Sepulveda and Ventura. Every day, 500,000 people pass by. Nobody stops. One guy stopped. He's the prophet. The one guy who stops to see the mansion, he's chosen. He cares. All right, let's take another one. This Seder Eliyahu Rabbah is a late Midrash. It's not a Midrash, actually. It's a collection of Midrashim. It's an anthology. And I don't know how the hell this thing works. A system fan. Oh, there it is. That's the problem. Okay, auto, cool. Zoya. Let's try 71. Okay, here we go. 71 was a very good year. Okay. Seder Eliyahu Rabbah is an anthology of earlier Midrashim. And what it does is it takes the Midrashim, which are usually very laconic, very telegraphed, very short, and it expands them into whole narratives. So here we get the whole narrative, and these are the narratives you're familiar with from Sunday school. Abram's family used to make images and sell them in the market. So that tells you two things. First, we don't know any of this, by the way, from the Bible. Oh, it's only in the book of Ezekiel that you're told that Terach, Abraham's father, was an idol worshiper. So the Midrash takes idol worshiper and they say, no. He wasn't just an idol worshiper. He was a manufacturer. He's the Cal Worthington of idols, right? Go see Terach, go see Terach, go see Terach. I can put you in this beautiful one for... Some of you know what I'm talking about, and many of you, it's like, what the hell is it? Here's my dog Spot, right? Cal Worthington was the biggest used cars. Never mind, it's not worth it. Terach is the General Motors of idols. Abraham didn't just come from an idol-worshiping family. He came from the people who manufactured and marketed them. He came from the heart of darkness. One day when it was Abraham's turn to sell, it's a family business, right? Which, by the way, shows you one nice thing. He stayed in the family business. Religion is the family business, right? Selling God is a family business. He just changed the product line, right? Lowered the profit margins. What? Streamlined it, right, yeah. Right. One day when it was Abraham's turn to sell, his father Terah gave him several baskets of household gods, set him up in the marketplace. A man came and said, "Have you a god to sell?" Abraham said, "Why, yes." "What kind of god do we wish to buy?" The man says, "I am a mighty man. Give me a god as mighty as me." Now that's interesting. So what is the Midrash's understanding of idolatry? What is idolatry? Yes. It's the worship of the ego, right? Or if you want to have more fun playing psychologist here, it's the worship of the ego you wish you had. It's the worship, it's the insecurity. It's the worship of the image I'm reaching for, right? Anyone who says, "I am a mighty man," he's not a mighty man. No mighty man says, "I am a mighty man," right? Right? What he says is, "I want to be. That's my aspiration." So I worship the projection of the ego, right? I want a God. So what is idolatry? It's the worship of the projection of my ego, and of my fears, and of the gaps in my character. It's the worship of that which I want but don't have, what I'm not yet. So Abraham took an image of a God standing on a shelf higher than all the others, because of course if it's on a higher shelf, it must be better.
Higher price too, right? Higher shelf, higher price?
Listen, I could say something about Lexuses, Acuras, and Infinities, but I won't. Pay the money and take this one. The man says to, because he's no fool, of course, the man says, "Is this God as mighty as I am?" Abraham says, "You fool. Don't you know the way of the gods? The one who sits above the others is the mightiest of all." "What, are you a fool? You never bought a god before? What the hell's wrong with you?" Look it up in Consumer Reports. You'll see, right? The man is about to leave. Abraham says, "No, how old are you?" And the man answers, 70 years. And Abraham says, "Woe to the man, 70 years, but bows before this thing which was made only today." And that the man flung the god back at Abraham's basket, demanded the return of his money, and went his way. So because he's a salesman of gods, he knows the inner illogic of the thing. Right? He gets the inner illogic of the thing, the contradiction. Next came a widow who said, "I'm a poor widow. Give me a god as poor as I am." And once again, Abraham took a god from lower shelf. "To suit your poverty, this god is humble, placed on a shelf below. He will not budge until you pay me the money." So he asked her, "How old are you?" And she says, "Old," because the Midrash is gentle. And Abraham said, "May the breath of such a one be wasted, to think that some so old bows before a god that's only a day old." And she drops it. So Abraham took all the gods and brought them back to his father Terach. And Terach's son said to their father, this Abraham doesn't know how to sell gods. Come, then let us make him a priest. That's a very funny line, right? If you can't do anything productive in the world, join the clergy. Right? If you can't do anything worthwhile in the world, so, how hard could this be, right?
Get the little black book.
There you go. Right, exactly right. Join the clergy. So Abraham says, what do I got to do? What's the work? So he says, you wait upon the gods, offer sacrifices to them, serve them food and drink. So it sounds like a stewardess, right? So they made him a priest. Abraham probably set food and drink before the images, said to them, come and eat and drink, so that you may be able to bestow good upon human beings, but not any of them took anything to eat or drink. A woman came carrying a bowl of fine flour, said, here, offer it to the gods. At that, Abraham seized a stick, smashed all the images, and placed the stick in the hands of the biggest of them. When his father came and said, who did this to the gods? Abraham said, would I hide anything from my father? A woman came with a bowl of fine flour and said, here, offer it up to them. And when I offered it, one god said, I'll eat first. Another said, no, I'll eat first. And then the biggest one rose up and smashed all the others. His father replied, are you making sport of me? They can't do anything. Abraham answered, you say they cannot? Let your ears hear what your mouth is saying. You all knew that story, right? Iconoclast. It's a good SAT word. Iconoclast means a smasher of idols. A smasher of that which a culture takes as sacred. So the monotheist is the one who smashes the idols of the cultures who came before him. Why? Because he recognizes their dishonesty, the false character of these idols, because they're just projections of the ego. And as projections of the ego, they will never inspire you to grow. Now it's going to get cold in here, right? You like it? You like it, they hate it. All right, fine. As projections of
You need to work this out in therapy.
I know.
You have to talk to your therapist about the thermostat.
I'm telling you, it's a problem. So what is the role? What is the image of the iconoclast here? And how does Abraham discover monotheism here? And there's a deeper lesson here. The iconoclast recognizes that we're worshiping nothing but ourselves, nothing but the parts of us which we're most insecure about. And he realizes that that's false because you'll never grow. You'll never become anybody. This is not a faith which is going to give you the capacity to self-create, to grow as a human being. So he smashes what was sacred in the culture. Martin Buber wrote a marvelous essay, early Religion and Religiosity. And he said in that essay that all religion begins when young men smash the idols of their fathers and say, that which you worship, that which you serve, that which you value so highly, it's false. It's remarkably false. And only when you adopt a value which is bigger than that, more encompassing, more comprehensive, and then the young man grows into maturity and he makes his God into an idol, and his son comes and smashes it. So he said religion is the province of old men defending what they count as sacred. And religiosity is the dynamic quality in religion in which we come and smash all that was there, that was sacred the generation before. And this is the necessary progression of faith. If you get stuck in one or the other, you don't grow. If you get stuck in the old religion and you never touch it with a stick, then you don't grow. You're nothing creative, nothing new. No energy is entered into the system. On the other hand, once the energy is entered into the system, it has to find a vessel. And this is the great alternation. So this is the image that we have from Abraham. One more piece of this, though. Yes, please.
So according to this,
Yeah.
God knew that Abraham was the right.
Yes, well, according to all of these Midrashim, these are all backstories, right? Which means these are all trying to explain why Abraham. And in both cases, what do you understand? That Abraham discovers God before God discovered Abraham. They're all trying to see what they're trying to do is this. If I imagine that the religious journey begins with a call from heaven, very few of us get that. Very few of us get called from heaven. But if I imagine that the religious journey begins with a moral journey, like in the house on fire, or the religious journey begins with the seeking truth, like the Abraham with the stick in his hand, then I begin to understand that all of us enter into the religious journey. Then we can all follow the footsteps of Abraham. That the call from heaven is the consequence of a human being who begins to ask the fundamental questions. Who cares? That's the moral question. What is the truth of the world? That's the idolatry question. You see? So that we can all, this now becomes our province. What they're trying to do is make him less unique. Because if he's unique, I can't follow him. If he's a moral genius, I'll never be a moral genius. If he's a religious virtuoso, I'll never be a religious virtuoso. But I can ask the question he asked in my context. Who cares for the world? Who cares? Who cares? Do you care? Or I can ask this question. What is it my culture worships, and is it true? These are we can now follow him. He now becomes the archetype, not the unique hero, but the archetype that we can identify with. Pop.
I have to object to what you said before about the generations.
Okay.
When you destroy something,
Yeah.
even though you're going to make something new, you wipe it clean.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
No?
One generation builds.
Yeah.
The next generation builds more, builds on it. The third generation builds on what the two generations before that. And that's how you develop.
Okay, so this is a different theory.
You have and the conversation between the generations helps you move up, and you move up the ladders like climbing a mountain.
All right, but let me ask you a question, right? You of all people, you left home. You left home and hitchhiked across the country and met Mom and had me, right? You left home. You left your parents' Judaism, your parents' values to build Eretz Yisrael.
I didn't. On the contrary, you got it wrong.
This is my therapy, Gelman.
I thought this was Torah.
This is family Torah hour. What the hell's wrong? Now,
My parents were very Jewish.
yeah, I know.
Very liberal.
Yeah, right.
And on their Jewishness and liberal,
Right.
I went the next step.
Okay.
I made Aliyah and
Yeah.
the kibbutz.
Right.
On the basis of that,
Yeah.
you developed your ideology.
Yeah.
And continued on, and Larry continued on, and all the boys did the same.
Right.
But it's called tradition. You build.
All right, so
and
that- but
it's
so-
all-
so that's-
even the Talmud doesn't erase anything.
You're right.
Even the Talmud keeps
Right.
everything.
That you're right, by the way. So you're that's the Talmud part you're exactly right about, because what you do is you write commentaries. And commentaries preserve the voices of the previous generation and add new voices. Okay? The question is there a role for revolution in the development of religion, of philosophy, of faith, of personality? Is there a role for revolution?
That's the next development.
But I'm not sure that it's so incremental as you're saying, and I think there's a little smashing involved. All right, let's get Bobby. Good point.
First off, I think the two of you are adorable. This makes it special. Even if you can't deal with it. With all due respect, but
The problem is I have to go stand on the bima in front of 700 people, and you're all going to walk in going, his dad told him he was wrong. You know? I don't know why the hell I should listen to him, you know.
anyway, I actually think, I think potentially we're all called by God, but we don't always notice it. I mean, if you see something and you stop, or you read something and it resonates with you, or
Yeah.
you see a movie or something and it hits you,
Yeah,
it's your decision
Right.
whether to act on it.
that's nice.
I think potentially each and every one of us can be called to do something.
Right.
But we don't always do it.
Well, the question is, most of us are consumed with the stuff that in our little circle of concern, right? What am I serving for lunch? Who's coming over? Where do I have to be Monday morning? How am I going to make this obligation? Can I afford this? little tiny circle, but every now and again something comes, and suddenly you're dealing with issues that are selfless, that are beyond the self. You're involved in the politics of the day. You're involved in the moral action of the day. Something comes and, even something, in Jewish faith we create small moments. I watched this week, a lot of us were at a Shiva minyan for a family. You gave up a whole evening of your life to come over and sit with the family and let them know they're alone in their moment of loss. It's a marvelous change in the way that you think about yourself in the world. You've grown. Your circle has now grown. Other people are involved in this election in one way or another. They're concerned for a vision of America. Your circle has grown. That's the call. That's what the Midrash is talking about. Evan's beautiful word. You become a caretaker. A caretaker in both senses, right? You're caretaking. You're protecting something, and you're a caretaker. You took care. You're taking care. I mean, that's exactly the call. One more point about this Midrash, then I want to get to the next one. So it's also, this is such an innocuous, sweet little Sunday school story, except for one problem. It asks a question which we never get to, which is, the God you're worshiping, is that God a projection of your ego? Is your God one of his idols? Right? If you talk about the God I worship one God, who's the God, not so good. Think about the God you're worshiping. To what extent is that God one God for you? Or one God is an expression of your ego, your needs, your prejudices, your biases? Or is it that that's one God and that God is just the biggest idol in the room, you see? Is monotheism the worship of the one, or is monotheism the worship of the biggest God in the room? And that raises a very interesting question. Now take a look at one more. We're running out of time, so we're going to get a couple of more sources in here. Ready? This is the Rambam. We had him last week, remember? Can't go wrong with the Rambam. So in the Rambam, in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, in the Mishnah Torah, his code of law, in the laws of idolatry, he tells you how idolatry came to the world. And basically, here's what he says. We all started out as monotheists. Adam knew there was one God. Abel knew there was one God. Cain, maybe not, but Abel did. And what happened is at a certain point in history, people made a mistake. They said, like this, if the king sends a servant, he should be as respected as the king is, because he's the king's representative. So I will revere the representative of the king. And they started revering stars and trees and mountains because they're the creations of God. And then they forgot about God and went on worshiping trees and mountains and stars. You see, they worshiped secondary things because at first they thought that was what God wanted, and then they forgot how they got into this. And pretty soon the whole world was worshiping fetishes, creations. Once Abraham was weaned, so he's a young kid. As a child, he began contemplating and thinking day and night. So what is Abraham? Child philosopher, right? And wondered how a sphere could follow a fixed path without being directed. Remember, he has a Ptolemaic astronomy. So the world is a bunch of spheres inside of spheres, right? We're in the middle. Around us is the moon. Around us are the planets and the sun. Around them are the stars. Around them are the angels. Around them, you get it? All these, and they're all moving. That's why the stars move in the sky at night. They're all moving. Think of a globe moving. So the question is, can the universe function on its own? Or does the universe have a guiding hand? If so, who directs it? Surely it would be impossible for it to rotate on its own. Abraham did not have a mentor, but was immersed among the stupid idolaters of Ur-Kasdim, where everyone, including his mother and father, served idols as did he. In his heart, however, he continued to contemplate until he realized the way of truth and understood the ways of righteousness from nature, and knew there is a God who directs the spheres, created the world, and besides whom there is no other. So how did he come to monotheism? Through science. By contemplating the nature of reality, he came to the conclusion that the common understanding of the world was wrong. The common understanding of the world was wrong. There's a different theory of the world. For Moses, Maimonides, monotheism is science. 2, 4. There is one. Those propositions are equivalent in their logic, in their ontology, in their logical weight. It's a conclusion drawn from contemplating the world. So Maimonides sees Abraham as the first philosopher who contemplates the world and comes to the conclusion that there must be one God who directs it all, not these multiple gods. Not these multiple gods. Because if there were multiple gods, what would you see in the universe? Chaos. Right. An ordered universe must mean an ordered mind, which means a disciplined, ordered monotheism. Otherwise, the whole thing would fall apart. That's the way he understands it. So in other words, in the same way that Copernicus looks at that Ptolemaic universe and says it doesn't work, Galileo looks in his telescope and sees moons around Jupiter, which the Ptolemaic universe cannot be at the center of the universe, because that can't happen. By the time you get to Copernicus, he works out the mathematics and shows that there is a much more elegant theory to explain how the world is. And from Copernicus, you come to Newton, who explains how gravity works. What's the mathematics behind how planets stay in their orbits and tides rise and fall? And all of that works until we build a nuclear reactor and start to discover that objects moving at the speed of light don't follow Newtonian rules. And then Einstein comes along and revives the whole thing, and that's the progress of science. That's the progress of science. Each theory, here my pop is right, each theory supplants the previous theory. It supplants the previous theory, but it includes it. No, it supplants the previous theory, but it includes it. Right? Newtonian physics explains the world you see, but it can't explain the world you don't see. Right? That's where Einsteinian physics comes in. And Einsteinian physics explains the world you don't see, but it can't explain light. And that's where quantum mechanics comes in. And that's the progress of science. Yes, please.
But basically we call this today the argument of design.
Yeah. It's an argument from design, but what's more important is the image of the religious journey, is the image of the person. It says you're not going to be convinced of this. You have to do the work. You have to contemplate. Which means something very interesting, by the way. Then who is religion for? The contemplative, which is not a lot of people. Most people would rather watch Dancing with the Stars. No, because what this demands is a disciplined mind, and the time to contemplate, and the courage to say, what I was taught is wrong. That's not the way the world works. Right? I have to think deeper now. It requires a very, very interesting personality and a very interesting context. Let's keep going. Ready? He also knew that the whole world was an error. Now, by the way, when you know that the whole world is an error, what do you call that? Insanity. That's like the guy who's driving the wrong way on the freeway and he says to himself, how come all these people are driving the wrong way on the freeway? Right? You understand that you're driving the wrong way on the freeway. It's so much easier to say, right? It's so much easier to follow, and there's a human impulse to do this. There's a deep psychology in just saying, okay, that's the way it must be, right? And knew that the cause was the mistake. They had worshipped stars, figures so long the truth had vanished. Abram was 40 years old when he recognized his Creator. So he started when he was 3 and he arrived at truth at 40. So those of you who are not 40 yet, wait. You don't know anything. This is true, by the way. Once he achieved this, you think you do, but that's part of the illusion. He achieved this. He began to reason with the inhabitants of Ur-Kasdim, to argue with them, saying that by serving idols they weren't following the way of truth. He broke the images and began proclaiming it's not fit to serve anything other than God, and to him it is fitting to bow down, offer sacrifices, so that all creation will recognize him. So you see, for Abraham, the question is, are you prepared to accept truth? This is truth. Are you prepared to accept truth? There is a marvelous scene, by the way, it was on PBS once, and it just stuck in my mind. Bertolt Brecht, the great writer, wrote a play called Galileo. And they show this scene where the bishops of the Pope come to Galileo's studio to offer him the deal, the plea bargain. If he will renounce his astronomy, they won't excommunicate him. Right? And what happens is Galileo is struck because he doesn't want to lose his family, he doesn't want to lose his friends, he doesn't want to lose his laboratory. So he says to the bishop, and I'll offer you a deal. You ready? He says, I'll sign the document if you go look in the telescope. The telescope's pointed at Jupiter. And he's seeing with the telescope the moons of Jupiter, which disproves Ptolemaic geometry, astronomy, which disproves the image of the universe with the Earth at the center, which disproves the sort of egocentrism of the whole church notion that, that we are the center of God's eye. It's a bigger universe, boys. That's what Galileo was saying. And so Galileo says to the bishop, I'll sign it. Just look in the telescope. And the guy says, I won't do that. That would be heresy. He says, I won't tell anybody. He said, just go look in the... And the guy says, I can't. And then finally, the two men face each other, and the bishop says, I can't. My whole life rests on this. I can't. And Galileo says, then I won't sign. Because I would rather rest my life on truth than rest my life on a lie, even if it's a comfortable lie. And that's the confrontation. For Maimonides, this is truth. This is truth. This is mathematical, astronomical, scientific, empirical proved truth. There's no other way to put it. He had proclaimed this, it was fit to destroy the figures because it's demeaning to human beings. This is another sermon we could give. Unintelligent religion is a sin. It's stupid religion is a sin. Unintelligent religion, religion that doesn't respect the intellectual dignity of adults, is a sin. Now, preaching childish religion is easy to do. Any one of us could do it. We could make you cry and laugh and stand and cheer and sing hallelujah and amen. It's easy to do. It's easy to deal with people's emotions. It's much harder to tell the truth. But for Maimonides, it was all about truth telling, and he was willing to risk everything for the truth, like Galileo. Risk everything for the truth. Since people were listening to Abraham, King Nimrod sought to kill him, which is a whole bunch of Midrashim. They were out to kill him. And a miracle was wrought, and he went to Haran. So that's Abraham in Maimonides. So who is he? He's the scientist, philosopher, or is truth. To be a monotheist is to embrace truth and not to let it go. Turn to two more. We have time in 5 more minutes. Any questions so far? Are we doing good? We got it? You got, what? Yo. You good? Okay. Kuzari. Yehuda Halevi is a doctor, philosopher, poet, probably the Jewish poet, lives in Spain in the 11th century, and writes Kuzari. There was a myth, the great myth story, that a kingdom in Central Asia called the Khazars converted to Judaism. And this was such a myth because at this moment, the Muslims and the Christians were predominant in Europe, and the Jews were a terrible, despised group. And so Halevi writes a defense of a despised faith. And he makes up this wonderful story of the Khazar. How did he come to Judaism? And the king of the Khazars is looking for truth, and he invites the philosopher, and he's unsatisfied with the philosopher's answer. And he invites the Christian, and the Christian tells him the whole story of Jesus, and he says, well, how do you know that any of this is true? He says, because it's in the Bible, right? And he said, well, the Bible's the Jews' Bible. He says, yeah. And the Muslim comes and tells him the Quran, and he says, but that's also based on the Jews' Bible. He says, so the king says, I wasn't going to invite a Jew, but it seems like everyone else's faith in the world is rooted in the Jews. Let's invite the Jews. So the rabbi comes, and the king and the rabbi have this dispute, this conversation. And the rabbi says to him, we know our truth is truth because we have a Torah from God. And he tells him the story of what makes you special. So this is the rabbi's answer. This is part 1, about halfway through the Khazar. God chose them as his people, those, the Jews, as his people from all the nations of the world, and allowed his influence to rest on all of them. His influence, the Hebrew is inyan Elohi. Inyan Elohi doesn't just mean influence like good ideas. Inyan Elohi means, Jews, you have a genetic capacity that no other people in the world have. You have a supercharged soul. Okay? It's very biological. They were addressed to him. Since Adam, only isolated individuals have been inspired. Adam was perfect because no flaw could be found in the work of the wise Creator. The soul with which he was endowed was perfect. His intellect was the loftiest which it was possible for a human being to possess, and beyond this, he was gifted with divine powers such as high rank that it brought into connection with divine beings and spiritual forces. So Adam was the most perfect human being ever, because he was the first. Everybody after that is a bad Xerox. Okay? God's influence, however, this special capacity was passed to isolated individuals who were perfect outwardly and inwardly, their lives, knowledge, and abilities being faultless. There were some, however, among them who did not come under God's influence, such as Terach, but his son Abraham was a disciple of his grandfather Aver, who was born in the lifetime of Noah. An ungodly man received consideration proportional to the minuteness of the essence with which he was endowed, for it reappeared in his children and grandchildren according to the purity of their lineage. So what happens is that this divine influence goes down through the generations. It skipped Terach and landed on Abraham. So who is Abraham? He is the genetically superior Superman. Right. Who are we Jews? Right now. The world, Christians rule half of the world, Muslims rule half of the world. We're the despised, pitiful little people. Who are we really? If you're a little boy and you're on your way to Hebrew and the Italian and Irish kids whose neighborhood you have to walk through beat the crap out of you every single time you get to Hebrew school. So by the time you get to Hebrew school, what do? You take out your sketchbook and you write a story about the most powerful soul who ever lived, who's cloaked beyond the thick glasses and haircut of Clark Kent. Superman was written by two Jewish kids who lived in Cleveland who got beat up. And the idea is that underneath this mild-mannered, nerdy exterior is the man of steel. And by the way, what's his real name? Now, outward it's Clark Kent. Cleel, the vessel of ale, God. Cleel, right? With a big Magen David epis on his chest. But you can't put a Magen David because no one will buy the comic book, so you make it an S, right? Right? And he has a funny outfit with a talus epis. You ever look like a... And he can see, he's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, fighting for truth, justice, and... Go ahead, beat me up. Someday you'll see who I really am. This is the theory. He believes that Jews possess genetic superiority. This is Jewish racism, right? This is what Hitler was so afraid of, right? He's right. Halevi says, we are superior. We're just quiet. No one knows this. Now, by the way, can anybody convert to Judaism? Sure, you can learn what we know. And what's the theory of conversion? You are actually a Jew. But somewhere along the line, your family got mixed up. So we're just returning you to the fold. Right? All right, let's see what he says. This is how we regard it. The rabbi traces the genealogy of Adam down to the Israelites. The gifts of prophecy are thus inherited. Abraham is superior because he's descendant of Adam. Moses is superior because he's descendant of Abraham. So the king asks him the obvious question. If you're here to convert me, this is the last thing you should have said, idiot. Right? That's what the king says to him. And the king really says, it's great, it's true greatness. This is the true greatness which descended directly from Adam. He was the noblest creature on earth. Therefore, you rank above all other inhabitants of the earth. But wouldn't it have been better or more commensurate with divine wisdom if all mankind had been guided in the true path? If you really have all this genetic capacity, shouldn't everyone have inherited it? And wouldn't God have had a better world if everybody had moral superiority, intellectual superiority? Wouldn't it be better if everybody was Jewish? Right? And his answer is, or wouldn't it be best for the animals to have been reasonable beings? That's the rabbi's answer. Now that's a very sly answer. What has he just said? You are to us what animals are to people. Not so nice, huh? This is a very racist thing, but this is a very powerful idea that's still and here's the latent part, the reason I brought this is because there is within Jewish culture this idea of chosenness that comes up in very interesting moments. Comes up in very interesting moments when, say, well, we're not like them. Them, us. And Halevi, he put forth this them, us argument because he was defending a community from the kind of oppression that they were living in. He didn't want them to be crushed psychologically by the forces of depression that they were living under. So he gave them Superman superiority, only cloaked in Clark Kent anonymity.
But Rabbi, this is 1,000 years ago, so aren't you engaging in presentism even when you use the word racism? It's such a loaded word.
Right.
It's
Right.
not even applicable to...
Well, it's not applicable.
1,000 years ago?
Yeah, except this book is really popular in certain circles in Israel today, right?
Well, that's the present, but you're...
And it's
talking
come,
about the
and it's
future.
not. I know, but and this idea still exists in Jewish life.
Yeah, from this you could draw racist conclusions, but
Yeah.
the actual author of this 1,000 years ago, I think it's a bit...
Yeah, you're right.
stretched to say he's a racist.
No, exactly. The word doesn't. The word describe. I'm using the word as a descriptive. It's only not descriptive. He's saying we have a genetic superiority that's biologically transformed. Call it what you want. One last one. Here's the Hasidic answer. So we've traced all of Jewish history in 40 minutes. This is Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes is Rabbi Yehuda Ariel Ger, who was the Hasidic Rebbe of the Ger Hasidim in Poland at the beginning of the 20th century. Go forth. Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Each person was created for a particular purpose. There must be something that we are to set right. Every one of us is put into the world to set something right. The person who achieves this is called a tzaddik. If you manage to do what you were sent into the world to do, you get recognized as a tzaddik, at least by God. Walking a straight path of justice. But Avram, our father, Avram Avinu, is called a chassid, a lover of God. He went beyond the line demanded by the law. Lifnim mishirat hadin. He goes beyond what is demanded of moral action. He becomes a higher level of moral hero. The one who serves God out of love can arouse a desire within God to let flow the source of his own soul in a way that cannot be comprehended by the human mind. This is classic Jewish mysticism, right? What happens here in the world below inspires something in the world above. The person who serves God out of selfless love here brings down into the world, upon himself and upon everyone around him, a flow of blessing. This is Chassidut. I can bring a flow of blessing into the world by being a lover of God. Okay? So Abraham is the ultimate lover of God who brings a flow of blessing into the world. That was his job. The world was unredeemable at that point. And he is the vessel of blessing into the world. Heyeh bracha. And how did he do it? By selflessly loving God. By giving up, by sacrificing his home and his family and his power and his position to follow God's word, then he becomes the vessel of blessing in the world. Thus, they interpret the verse, those who fulfill his word hear the voice of his word. By properly mending our deeds, we come to hear more and more. This goes on forever. The chassid serves God in order to become attached to the root of the mitzvah, ever seeking to hear new things. He is the great seeker. He's seeking, and his love of God. Human beings were sent into the world in order that all places be restored, that holy sparks be drawn forth from everywhere. This is the meaning of Abraham's wandering. So who is Abraham? He's the first chassid. Not chassid like you know from guys with black coats and tefillin. Not that kind of chassid. A human being who selflessly loves God and selflessly loves the world. And because of his selfless love, changes the environment in which he lives. Makes gentle the environment in which he lives. And redeems the world, or sort of in a perimeter. And the deeper his love, the deeper his selflessness or her selflessness, the wider the perimeter of that redemption that goes on. And this is the religious journey, says the Chassid, says the Hasidic tradition. These are all visions of the great religious journey of Abraham. And because Abraham's the patriarch, they're all visions of our religious journey as well. Let's have a good Shabbos. Take good care.